is going to be an explanation of subjects and direct objects and how they function in Latin. In English, you will know the subject, and remember the subject is the doer of the verb, and you will know the direct object, and the direct object answers whom or what after the verb. For example, if I said Mr. Adams kicks, you want to know what does he kick? Well, the desk was the direct object because it received the action of the kicking. So the direct object either answers whom or what after the verb, or you could say it is the receiver of the action. Now, if we consider the two sentences, the boy bites the dog, and the dog bites the boy. In English, we will know what is the subject, the doer, versus what is the direct object, the receiver of the action, by the word order. In the first one, the boy is the one who is doing the biting, and the dog is the direct object, as it answers whom or what the boy bites, or you could understand it as the dog receives the biting. Likewise, in the second one, the dog bites the boy, because the word order is changed. Now we have the dog as the one doing the biting, and the boy receiving the action. Now, first and foremost, you must understand as well, in order to have a direct object, your verb has to be of a particular type. Now, the two types of verbs that you can encounter like this are known as transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. Transitive verbs are those verbs that can have a direct object. In Latin, we've seen them as audit, and vexat, and videt, and amat. Because when you translate each of these, he hears, he annoys, he sees, he loves. He hears what? He annoys what? He sees what? He loves what? And thus, these verbs can have a direct object. They transfer action. Intransitive verbs are going to not have direct objects. Verbs like dormit, and sedet, and curit, and habitat. He sleeps. He cannot sleep a table. He can hear a table. He can annoy a table. Look at your table. He can see a table. He can love a table, but he cannot sleep a table. He cannot sit a table. He cannot run a table. He cannot live a table. And so these are verbs that do not have a direct object. Now, in Latin, instead of depending upon word order to be able to determine what the subject is versus what the direct object is, in Latin it is all a matter of the form of the words, the nouns. And that is where things called cases come in. In Latin there are two cases. And those cases are called nominative and accusative. Now, hopefully you have noticed in class, every single time I say nominative, students say subject. Every single time I say accusative, students say direct object. And that is because every single time a word appears in the nominative, aqua, quibus, liber, pater, mater, it's going to function as the subject. And so if we were to translate these words, we cannot just say water, we must say the water does something. The water verbs, the food verbs, the book verbs, the mother or father verbs, the mother verbs. Likewise, for these in the accusative, it would be that the subject verbs the water, the subject verbs the food, the subject verbs the book, the subject verbs the father, the subject verbs the mother. And in the plural, it's the same way. The waters do something or verb, the foods verb, the books verbs, the father's verb, the mother's verb, and then likewise, the subject verbs the waters, the subject verbs the foods, the subject verbs the books, the subject verbs the fathers, and the subject verbs the mothers. Now, I always give an example at the very beginning. Latinglish. In that, if we think about the sentence that we had a second ago, of the boy bites the dog, in Latin it would be boius, and that's a nominative subject ending. Bitet, bites, the T ending, he, she, or it, the boy. And then it would be dogum, the boy bites the dog. But if I were to switch it around and make it dogum beatet boyus, it does not now say the dog bites the boy, because a word order in Latin means nothing. Instead, what's important is the form of the noun. If it is accusative, direct object. If it is nominative, subject. And how are you going to know? By knowing your endings, which are what we put on the board every single day. So here, dogum, it might be the first word of the sentence, but it is the direct object. And if I were to just have dogum, I know that the subject verbs the dog. Beatet tells me what that verb is. The subject bites the dog, and I know the subject is a he, or a she, or an it. Then when I look at boyus, I find out who that he, that she, or that it is that is doing the action. It is a boy. And so even though it's dogum beatet boyus, it is still the boy bites the dog. And that is what subject, doer of action, and direct object, answers whom or what after the verb, receiver of the action, indicates. And in Latin, word order, nothing. Everything is on the form as to whether it is an accusative form or whether it is a nominative form. And again, looking over at our chart, you've got to memorize these endings, because you need to know when it's aqua, it's the water verbs. You need to know when it's patrem, it's the subject verbs the dad. You need to know if it's libros, the subject verbs the books, plural. And that is why these endings are so important, because word order is irrespective, and instead what is important is knowing which word is the subject nominative and which word is the direct object accusative. The other thing that we go over every day is that all Latin nouns belong to certain categories, and those categories are called declensions. Aqua has first declension endings, therefore it is a first declension word. Quibus and liber have second declension endings, therefore they are second declension words. Pater and mater are third declension words with third declension endings. And so if we look at the accusative direct object forms, it could be an am as an accusative direct object on a first declension word, a um as a second declension ending of the accusative direct object, and em on third declension accusative direct object. And thus you can see all of the endings that are here that we put on the board every day help to determine as to whether the noun does the action as a subject nominative, or whether that noun answers whom or what after the verb, receives the action as an accusative direct object. And that's the whole point of learning these endings. Because anywhere in the sentence, I can put matrem, but when I see matrem, I know that matrem isn't doing a darn thing. Matrem is functioning as the direct object. The subject verb's the mom. I can put mater as the very last word of the sentence. However, it tells me, due to the form of being in the nominative, subject, that the mater does the action, whatever that verb might be. And that is subject, direct object, nominative, accusative, in a nutshell. Thank you.